Welcome to today's discussion. Today we are going to discuss about mycology, the introductory aspects of mycology. Mycology is the study of different type of fungi. The word mycology comes from the word, a Greek word, which is mycos. Mycos means mushrooms. So we have this mycology word derived from the word mycos. There are different type of So, although there are many different species of fungi, we will be restricting ourselves to the discussion of medically important fungi. That means those which are pathogenic, those which cause diseases and infections in humans. So, fungi are basically existing in a number of different environments as parasites, saprodes, and symbionts. So they can be found in the soil, they can be found in the dead and decaying organic matter, they can be found in water. So fungi can also grow on animal excreta. These are called as coprophilous fungi. They can cause infections in insects. These are called as entomogenous fungi. Then some fungi are also capable of infecting small animals. These are called as predaceous fungi. So there are many different types and classes of fungi, and we would be dealing with the medically important fungi. So fungi are eukaryotic protista. They differ from bacteria and other prokaryotes in many different aspects. Like the cell wall of fungi contains chitin, mannins, and other polysaccharides. The chitins give rigidity and support to the fungal cell. Then the cytoplasmic membrane of fungi contains rosterols. Fungi possess two nuclei with nuclear membrane and a paired chromosome. They divide asexually, sexually, or by both methods. And fungi can be seen as unicellular forms or multicellular forms. Coming to few terms in mycology, so we have hyphae. So what is hyphae? Hyphae is an elongation of apical cell which produces a tubular thread-like structure. So basically hyphae is a long elongated thread-like structure. And when many different hyphae come together and get entangled into masses, then it is called as mycelium. So fungi which produce mycelia are called as molds or filamentous fungi. So hyphae can be septate or aseptate. So septate hyphae is the one which is having compartment-like structures. So here we can see that this is the hyphae which has some compartment-like structure. So this would be called as the septate hyphae. Then the other type of hyphae is the aseptate hyphae. So here we have a diagram of aseptate hyphae in which there are no compartments. So medically important fungi can also be in the forms or can also possess a septate or an aseptate hyphae. Then again hyphae can be aerial or vegetative. So the aerial hyphae is the one which grows above the surface of the media, and the vegetative hyphae is the one which grows beneath or into the medium. Coming to the classification of fungi, so we have the systemic classification of fungi, but for routine purpose, we use the classification which depends on morphology. So the morphological classification of fungi includes yeast-like fungi, molds, and dimorphic fungi. So one by one, we'll be seeing what are these. So first we have the yeast. So yeast are unicellular forms of fungi. These reproduce by budding. These can be circular or oval cells. So here we have a gram stain of yeast. So here we can see that there are oval cells. Example is Cryptococcus neoformans. This is a picture of India in preparation of Cryptococcus neoformans. So this is the Cryptococcus neoformans, which has a capsule, which is a hollow structure around the cell, and this is the dark background. This is a characteristic feature when we stain Cryptococcus neoformans by negative staining method, that is the India ink staining method. So this is a slant or growth of Cryptococcus neoformans on Sabouraud dextrose agar. So we can see that white colored colonies or off-white colored colonies are produced which are having smooth consistency. Next, coming to yeast-like fungi. They grow partly as yeast and partly as elongated cells resembling hyphae, which are called as pseudohyphae. These are not true hyphae, so they are called as pseudohyphae. So here we can see that we have the yeast cells which are oval and budding, and then it produces an elongated hyphae-like structure. So since it is not a true hyphae, it is called a pseudo-hyphae. Example is Candida albicans. So this is a picture, or this is a gram stain picture of Candida albicans. And here on the left hand side, we have growth of Candida albicans on Sabouraud's dextrose agar. Next, we have molds or filamentous fungi. So these are having true mycelia, and they reproduce by formation of different type of spores. Okay, so here they have a true hyphal structure. They grow in filamentous forms. So here we have a gram stain picture of fungal hyphae. So here we can see that gram positive hyphae is seen, and this is the picture of molds grown on Sabouraud's dextrose agar. So here we can see that filamentous or mycelial growth is seen. Okay, thread-like growth is seen on the surface of Sabouraud's dextrose agar. Then we have molds growing on bread. So this is a very routine picture. We can also see it in our environments, in our houses. Okay, so we have the molds which is growing on the food article. Example of molds or filamentous fungi is Rhizopus and Mucor. And last is the dimorphic fungi. The name indicates that it exists in two forms. So it occurs in two forms. One is the mold or the filamentous form, which is seen at 25 degrees Celsius, that is at room temperature, present in the soil. And the another one is in the yeast form. This is seen at 37 degrees Celsius. This is found in the host cells. Most of the fungi causing systemic infections are dimorphic. For example, we have Histoplasma capsulatum, we have Phocaidioides immitis, we have Paraphocaidioides brasiliensis, etc. Coming to the systemic classification, it is based on sexual spore formation. There are four classes. We have zygomycetes, ascomycetes, basidiomycetes, and deuteromycetes, or fungi imperfecta. So the earlier three, zygomycetes, ascomycetes, and basidiomycetes, they reproduce sexually. First, coming to zygomycetes. So these are lower fungi. They have broad and aseptate hyphae, aseptate or non-septate hyphae. So here we can see they have broad hyphae. Then they produce asexual spores. They have the sporangiospores present. So these sporangiospores are present within a swollen sac-like structure, which is called as sporangium. So this is a swollen sac-like structure which is called as sporangium, and inside the sporangium these sporangiospores are present. Next we have the sexual spores of zygomycetes. So these spores are the zygospores. These are the resting thick-walled cells in between the hyphae. So this is the hyphae and these are the zygospores. For example, these are seen in Rhizopus, Mucor, and Absidium. Then we have ascomycetes. This includes both yeast and filamentous fungi. These have narrow and septate hyphae, and they have asexual spores which are called as conidia, which are present or borne on the conidiophore. So this is the conidiophore, and on the conidiophore the conidia are present. So these small round structures are the conidia. Next we have the sexual spores of ascomycetes, which are called as ascospores. These are present within a small sac-like structure which is called as ascus. Okay, so this is the ascus a sac-like structure, and inside the ascus there are ascospores present. Several asci may be seen within a fruiting body, as seen in Penicillium and Aspergillus. Each ascus has 4 to 8 ascospores. So here we have the ascospores inside the ascus. Next we have basidiomycetes. Sexual fusion results in the formation of a club-shaped organ called as the base or the basidium, and which bears or possesses spores which are called as basidiospores. So we have the basidium here, and on the basidium the basidiospores are present. So this is seen in basidiomycetes. Lastly, we have deuteromycetes or fungi imperfecti. This group of fungi is having the characteristic that the sexual phase is not identified. It grows as molds as well as yeast. The asexual stage possesses conidia. For example, we may have candida or tryptococcus. Coming to the vegetative structures of fungi, they are formed by the vegetative mycelia. It is a modification of single vegetative cell or hyphae. They have no reproductive value, but they are important in differentiation and identification of clinically significant fungi. So we have different vegetative forms like the nodular organ, the racquet hyphae, the pectinate body, the flavic chandelier, and the spiral hyphae in T mentagrophytes, in the dermatophytes, the Trichophyta mentagrophytes. Then next vegetative structures are the arthrospores, which are formed by segmentation and condensation of hyphae. So these are the arthrospores. So the hyphae are segmented and get condensed. Then we have the chlamydospores. These are thick-walled resting spores. They are seen in Candida albicans. So these round structures are the chlamydospores seen in Candida albicans. Coming to the reproduction in fungi, so fungi reproduce sexually or asexually. Sexually is by formation of zygospores, ascospores, or basidiospores, and asexually is by budding or fission. The spores of the conidia are formed on or in or on the specialized structures. Then spores vary in size, shape, and color, but these characteristics are constant for a particular species. So even though there are various sizes, shapes, and colors of different spores, the representative species have same type of spores. Okay. So these spores may be like the microconidia and the macroconidia, which are seen in the dermatophytes. So microconidia are small and single cell. So here we have a picture in which we have these small microconidia. As the name is indicating micro, that means these are smaller structures. And then we have the macroconidia. These are large, single or many cell. So we have these macroconidia. These are larger than the microconidia, and these are elongated and they have compartments. So again here we have a picture of a wet mount of macroconidia. Next, coming to fungal infections. So fungal infections are also called as mycosis. So we have basically two types, the superficial mycosis and the deep mycosis. The superficial mycosis again has two types, the surface and the cutaneous mycosis, and the deep mycosis has again two types, subcutaneous and systemic mycosis. So coming to the superficial mycosis, so first we have the surface mycosis. So these are present, these fungi infect the dead surfaces of the skin and its appendages. Okay, for example, we have Tinea versicolor, Tinea nigra, and Hydra. Okay, these are the names of the diseases which are caused by the representative fungi. So these are the picture of Tinea versicolor. Then we have next type, the cutaneous mycosis. These fungi infect the conified layers of the skin and its appendages. For example, we have the dermatophytosis, the dermatophyte infections of the skin, hair, and nails. There are three species of dermatophytes which infect humans. So we have trichophyton, microsporum, and epidermophyton. So this is a picture of dermatophytosis. Then next we have deep mycosis, in which we have the subcutaneous mycosis and systemic mycosis. So the subcutaneous mycosis is like mycetoma. This is the disease which is caused by different species of fungi. Okay, then we may have diseases like sporotrichosis, rhinosporidiosis, etc. So here we have on the left hand side picture of mycetoma. This is also called as Madura foot. Then we have systemic mycosis, like we have cryptococcosis, blastomycosis, paracoccidioidomycosis, coccidioidomycosis, and histoplasmosis. Systemic mycosis are deep infections. They are systemic infections. Nextly, coming to opportunistic infections, these are seen in patients with some underlying debilitating diseases and altered physiological state. Like, for example, a person may have diabetes mellitus, so a person may have AIDS. So these are the predisposing factors for opportunistic infections. These infections or diseases are caused by fungi, which are likewise not pathogenic or not or innoxious to a healthy person, but a person with any underlying or debilitating immune status may acquire these infections, and these fungi then cause established diseases in these people or in these hosts. For example, we have fungi like Aspergillus, Penicillium, Mucor, Rhizopus, which may produce some serious and fatal infections in these people. Next, coming to the diagnostic aspects or laboratory diagnostic aspects of these medically important fungi. So because this is an introductory aspect, we will be seeing only the few important points. Okay, so or the representative points. So for the lab diagnosis, we need to have a proper specimen first. So we have different specimens collected depending on what site is affected. For example, in cases of dermatophytes, okay, in cases of surface mycosis, we can have specimen like skin scrapings collected. In dermatophytes, we can have the specimens collected from the skin scrapings, the hair stubs can be collected, and nail. So nail scrapings and nail clippings can be collected. Then in deep mycosis, we may have respiratory symptoms. So in such cases, specimens like sputum can be collected or bronchoalveolar lavage can be collected. Then again, we have deep mycosis or opportunistic mycosis, which have systemic signs and symptoms. We may have specimens like blood, cerebrospinal fluid collected. We may have different tissues collected. We may have biopsies. We may have FNACs collected. We may have bone marrow collected. We may have different body fluids which can be collected. Then urine of the patient can be collected, vaginal secretion, stool can be collected. In cases of eye infections, corneal scrapings can be collected. So depending on what is the type of mycosis, what site is affected, we need to collect the appropriate specimen. So once we have the appropriate specimen, we can move on with the microscopy. So we have different type of microscopies done. So we may have unstained preparations and stained preparations. In the unstained preparations, we may perform a wet mount. So we may have a KOH mount first. So KOH is potassium hydroxide. Maybe at 10%. Okay, so I said maybe because it depends on the specimen. For example, we have if we have a skin scraping, we can dissolve it in 10% KOH. But for hard specimens like nail clippings, we need to increase the concentration of KOH. So we may need 20% or 40% KOH. So we take a slide on which we take a drop of KOH and in which we mix the specimen or add the specimen, put a cover slip, heat the preparation gently and just allow it to rest for some time, maybe 10 minutes. Okay, and After that, we may observe it under the microscope. So depending on the specimen, we need to have the specimen to be rest for some time. So it may take from about 10 minutes to half an hour, 30 minutes. So after finishing all this procedure, we can observe the preparation under the microscope, under the low power and high power of the microscope. So we may screen the slide for observing any fungal elements. So we can see fungal elements in the form of fungal filaments, in the form of hyphae, seen in the preparation. Then we may have KOH, which is added or dissolved, which is combined with chalcochrome white stain. So this stain binds to the fungal elements, and we can see fungal elements which have fluorescence. So this gives a better contrast and better identification can be done. Then we have stain preparations, like we can move on with simple staining like gram staining. So we can make smears of the specimens and stain them with gram staining and look for gram-positive filaments. We can look for gram-positive yeast cells which are budding. We can look for gram-positive yeast cells with sugar hyphae, etc. Then we can have other methods like periodic acid shift, which can be prepared or which can be performed on tissue sections. Okay, then we have special staining methods like the Gomori's, Gomori's methanamine silver staining. Then we may have Mayer's mesicarmine staining, which is specially done on cryptococos. So like this, we have different staining methods also. Then after microscopy, we can move on for culture. Now for culturing the specimen for growing different type of fungi, we need to have a medium which is called as Sabarots dextrose agar. So Sabarots dextrose agar can be prepared as plain preparations in a slant in a test tube or in a petri dish, but slants are preferred because if we want to isolate fungi, we need to incubate them for a longer period. And having a slant is always advantageous because the problem of drying is not there or is delayed. Drying of the medium is delayed. Then we can also have SDA in which certain antibiotics like chloramphenicol and cyclophosphamide can be added. These antibiotics are added to remove or suppress the growth of saprophytic fungi, which may be present in the specimens. Then, after inoculating the specimen on the slant, we need to incubate them at different temperatures. So, there are some fungi which grow at room temperature, and there are some fungi which grow at 37 degrees Celsius. So, we have fungi which grow at an optimum temperature of 20 to 25 degrees Celsius, that is room temperature, or at 37 degrees Celsius. So we have keeping both these possibilities in mind, we need to incubate these slants at both the temperatures. Now the fungi usually take a long time to grow. Yeast and yeast-like fungi like Cryptococcus and Candida albicans will grow faster, whereas molds like dermatophytes will take a longer time to grow. So fungi need a long incubation period, so we need to incubate the slants for 4 weeks. And intermittently, we go on taking the readings at the end of every week. So we inoculate the specimen on the slant and incubate them at 37 degrees Celsius as well as at room temperature for at least 4 weeks. At the end of the fourth week, if we have no growth, then we can give a negative report. But in the meanwhile, whenever we have a growth, we need to identify. Identification is mostly or mainly based on the morphology, okay, on identifying the morphological characteristics of the fungi. So the morphology can be observed on the slant, on the SDA also. Okay, the colony morphology is observed on the slant. So when we are observing the colony morphology, we have to see the growth pattern, whether it is having filamentous growth or not. Okay, whether it is a mold or not. Okay, then we need to comment on the color of the fungus. Okay, so we have to observe or we have to comment on the obverse and the reverse of the slant. Sometimes there are fungi like T. rubrum, okay, Trichophyton rubrum, which gives a nice pigment on the reverse and obverse on the slant. Okay, so we have this T. rubrum which gives a wine red color pigment on the slant. So there are many different pathogenic fungi which give such type of pigment. So we can observe the slant for certain pigment production also. Then after commenting on the colony morphology and color, etc., we can move on for the LPCB mount. This is lactophenol cotton blue mount. This is a solution. LPCB is a solution, and we take a few drops of the solution on a slide, pick up the growth from the slant, and put it or mix it in the LPCB by gently teasing it and with the help of a needle, and then it is covered with a cover slip and then observed under the microscope. Okay, so we can observe it at low power as well as high power. So we look for the morphology of the fungi. We look for the presence of fungal hyphae, whether it is a septate or a aseptate hyphae. We look for the presence of spores, like we may look for the presence of a conidiophore with conidia. We may look for the presence of microconidia, macroconidia. So depending on what disease we are expecting or what disease we are suspecting, we need to have the idea of or we need to know what we have to see in the slide. For example, if the specimen is a skin scraping in which skin scraping from a patient in which dermatophytosis is suspected, so in that we need to look for microconidia and macroconidia. Then we may have another methods like slide culture. On slide culture, we actually grow the fungus again on the medium and observe it directly under the microscope without disturbing the morphology. When we are making an LPCB mount on a slide, we pick up the growth from the slant and then mix it in LPCB or tease it in LPCB. So during this procedure, we are disturbing or disrupting certain important morphological aspects or features of the fungi. Okay, for example, if we are picking up a growth of Aspergillus niger, this is a mold which is growing on Saccharomyces agar. So when we pick this up and tease it in LPCB during the teasing procedure, a lot of the conidia which are produced on the conidiophore get disrupted. Okay, this Aspergillus niger will produce conidia, and it has a very characteristic arrangement of conidia on the conidia core. So during this preparation of LPCB mount, this characteristic appearance may get disturbed, but that is not done in a slide culture. So in slide culture, the advantage is that we do not disturb any morphological feature of the fungi, and we can identify them much in a much more better way than the LPCB mount. But again, in comparison, the slide culture will take longer time because in slide culture we are actually growing the fungi again. Whereas in LPCB we do not grow it again. So that would be the difference. And in LPCB, we have a better contrast. Okay, the background is colorless, whereas the fungi, they acquire a blue color. So there is a better contrast in identification, or identification becomes easy. Whereas in slide culture, we need to identify the fungi in an unstained form. Then after that, we may have special identification tests, like in case of Candida, we have a special test called as the germ tube test. Then we can also have certain metabolites or end products identified of different fungi with the help of gas liquid chromatography. Then serologically, we can also identify the antigens and antibodies of different fungi by different serological methods like the latex agglutination, ELISA, complement fixation test, etc. Then we may also have skin tests. For example, we have the dermatophytes, okay, in which we can have certain antigens which are detected with the help of a delayed hypersensitivity test. Then we may have certain molecular methods done like the PCR test or the PCR method, in which we are identifying the genes or the genome of the fungus. Then we may have the epidemiological markers identified, like we may have the phage typing, biotyping, etc. These methods can be done on the different fungal isolates. Then we may have animal inoculation tests done. Animals can be inoculated to identify the fungi. Even though we have all these different methods available for practical purpose, we have identification which is based on morphology, LPCB, and slide culture methods. Lastly, coming to the useful properties of different fungi. Now, in the beginning of the discussion, we had seen that we are going to deal with the medically important fungi. That means those which are causing infections or diseases in humans. Okay, but there are also certain fungi which are helpful to us, which are helpful to humans. Although we have started with discussing those which are dangerous to humans, even though we have some which are good for humans, which are helpful for humans. So we have certain species of mushrooms or edible mushrooms. So mushrooms, we can have these fungi as source of food. Then we have certain fungi like Saccharomyces species, which is used in the production of alcohols and bread in the fermentation process. Then we have certain fungi like Penicillium notatum, from which we can get the antibiotic penicillin. Then we have certain fungi like Claviceps purpuri, from which the ergot is derived, which is used to induce uterine contraction. Then we have an yeast, which is Saccharomyces cerevisiae, which is used to engineer the hepatitis B vaccine. Then next, coming to certain pictures of some routine fungi that we encounter. So we have the Aspergillus species. So here we have growth of four different Aspergillus species. So Aspergillus is a mold. So here we can see in all the different pictures that it is growing in a filamentous form. So as we have seen in the identification methods, we have discussed that these fungi are morphologically identified for routine on routine basis. So here we can see that we can have different morphologies, which we can have different colors which are produced by the fungi. We can have different pigments which are produced by the fungi. All we have discussed in the laboratory diagnosis. So this is a slant which has the growth of Aspergillus niger. So here we have a slant, and this black colored growth is the growth of Aspergillus niger. Then we have the other three species. We have Aspergillus flaris, Aspergillus fumigatus, and Aspergillus terris. All these three different fungi species of Aspergillus have different colors. Okay. So like this, commenting or identifying the morphology will help in identification of different fungal species. Then this is the growth of dermatophytes. So we can see that dermatophytes again grow in a mold form, filamentous form. So this is dermatophytes will grow in a cottony white growth. And then we have spoken about T. rubrum, which has a special wine red pigment which is produced. So we have this pigment of T. rubrum on the reverse of the slant, and we have this T. rubrum growing on SDA median plate. So with this, we end up with a small discussion or small briefing on the introductory aspects of medically important fungi. Thank you.